Empire Range. In 1904, there were two Marine camps established on the Isthmus of Panama. And one of those was named Camp Elliott, which was located near the town of Culebra on what is now the west bank of the canal. And this is pretty much in the central part of the isthmus. Following the completion of the Panama Canal, the Panama Canal government began a policy of giving the Army its excess building and property in two former construction era communities. Two of the communities they no longer required were Culebra and Empire. Empire was transferred to the Army on November 25th, 1914, and Culebra was transferred on March 25th, 1915. The land and buildings of both the abandoned construction era communities were incorporated into Camp Elliott. Later, Camp Elliott was renamed Camp Gilliard. Then on October 8, 1927, after the completion of Fort Davis on the Atlantic side and Fort Clayton on the Pacific side, the Camp Gilliard was deactivated. The remaining buildings were either moved or demolished, and the land was converted to be part of an artillery practice range, and it was called Empire Range. Empire Range was an odd shape with firing positions fanned out around a central impact area. In September 1994, part of Empire Range was transferred into temporary camps for Cuban migrants during Operation Safe Haven. There was a study that was conducted in the late 90s as part of the transition to Panama, and the study looked at unexploded ordnance, UXO, on the ranges. And Empire Range also had a TTC, Tropical Test Center, location that shows up on one of their maps. Empire Range was fully turned over to the Republic of Panama in 1999. So the points that I'm using in Empire Range were, for the most part, former firing points or structures used for communications and etc. Those areas were typically kept clear of vegetation as much as possible. This first one is firing point 11, and the Empire Range was reported by Brian Shee, Kevin McElroy, and Jack Allred. And this particular area, I'll back out here some. This is the Miraflores Locks location. And the new part that was added is right here. And when they did that, they actually took part of what was Empire Range, and it was excavated out. There was like an observation point and so forth. And also in looking at it over a period of time, using different views on Google Earth Pro, it appears that the soil and material that was excavated from here was spread around several areas, including very close or over this firing point 19. and also down in part of what had been the central impact area, and also up in this direction, which had other firing points and so forth. I want to show you some of the attachments here. If we go to our 1969 low resolution view, we're right on the edge here in this area, and you can see roadways and the fact that it's been kept somewhat clear. This also shows you, there was a fair amount of distance between there and the canal, but with the new locks, they took out this area here. Now, I mentioned there were construction era towns, and one of them was called Elliott. And this is actually a photograph of the town Elliott, and it was taken in 1908. This is a photograph of Camp Elliott, and we don't know the date on this. Camp Elliott initially was used by the Marines, and then was used by the Army. This is a 1920 photograph of Camp Gilliard, and Camp Elliott was renamed Camp Gilliard, and you can see the canal over on the side. And all of these things were torn down. Buildings were either removed or whatever, and it became Empire Range. And this is a map showing the different ranges, and this is Empire Range here. And as I mentioned, it's kind of an odd shape. The reason being that it had firing points located around the perimeter, and it had a central impact area. And on our TTC map, we're talking this point right here, and they mark it as the Empire Range area. Now I have a couple things that are linked to this that we want to take a look at. And this first one is the range study that I mentioned. And this is the final report, July 1998. And this study, one of the primary things that I used it for was that it gives coordinates of the different points on the range. So I was able to locate firing points and so forth. The study itself, for anyone that's interested, it was looking at unexploded ordnance and or UXO on the ranges, and they were trying to find out the extent of possible UXO concentrations. And the study was done by some civilian personnel, but also people from both the Army and Navy participated in this. And they go through and they talk about the techniques they use and the process they're going to follow, and how they were going to divide up the areas and so forth to do like a grid sweep and a fan sweep and etc. And they talk about each point in some to some amounts. The next thing is, this is a post that was done while the study was going on. This particular one is March 1997. And they talk about the study itself, and also complications on site cleanup and so forth. And they also mentioned that there was uh, find here. They found uh, mentions of chemical agents used by the Army and tests by the Tropical Test Center uh, on New Empire Range, is what they called it. And they said, well, that was out of the scope of this particular study, and that it was tasked with looking for UXO. But they felt in this post that there's enough information on chemical contamination to warrant further investigation. Okay, let's move on to our next point. And our next point is firing point 11. And this is the current view. And this road was widened since the area was turned over to Panama. And when I looked at it over time in Google Earth Pro, it does appear that in this particular area, material for construction and perhaps some vehicles were stored in here while they were doing the construction. And if we look at the range study for this, we're firing point 11. They described it as a former mortar and howitzer firing point located on a flat hilltop. And they felt it was of low concern as far as unexploded ordnance. The next point is firing point 15. Before I go to this, let me go back to firing point 11. I want to show you, even though it's low resolution on our map. This is from 1969, and you can see the outline of the area. And this is the road that was widened. And that's just our range map again. All right. So back to our next point, which is firing point 15. I saw no indication that any particular kind of construction activity or anything went on in this area when I looked at it over the years in Google Earth Pro. This was also classified by the UXO study as an area of no concern. So if we go through our 1969 view, it clearly shows up just the way it does now. And that's our range study, and that's our Tropical Test Center map. And if I pull out here a little bit on this top, it is located on a hilltop. as you can see, and the central impact area was down in here. Okay, firing point 15. And the study said firing point 15 was a former 105 millimeter howitzer firing point located on a flat hilltop, which is exactly what we see when we look at it here. Okay, our next point was called the Tire House Complex. And this is, to give you an idea where we were just down here talking about firing point 15. We're now up here. And I used the study to map this, and the study also said that they had no concerns about the firing point and as far as UXO, excuse me. And the study classified this as a 4-room structure made of tires that are used to train teams and individuals on the techniques of entering, clearing, and securing a building and its rooms. Ordnance used here was restricted to small arms, fragmentation hand grenades, and plastic explosives. Now, obviously, the tire complex is long gone, but this is the area that it was located in. And we go to our low resolution view. We are now here. Okay, another location, Empire Range. Now, this location was reported by Brian Shee, and this was called Camp Bayonet. And again, I used the study to get the location and so forth. And the study did indicate this is an area of high unexploded ordnance concern. And they're uncertain what efforts may have been done, to clear this. I'll show you in a minute here why they have concerns about it, but the area was all within here. And Brian described it as you came out on the dirt road and there were screen buildings, concrete pad with a top and 2 small guard shacks. You can see how the area has, this is a current view, has the appearance of being cleared. And if we look at our 1969 view, you'll see that the area appears cleared here also. And that's just our range location. The study says that Camp Bayonet may have been used as a bombing range and as an ammunition destruction site in the past. Part of what they did in this study is they went back with through any available documentation on how the different locations were used within the range over a period of time. Okay, and our last point, and I'll back out a little to give you perspective. Okay, we're now here at 24, and this was a site of a communications bunker. And we'd looked at the different firing points up in here, Camp Bayonet, and the purpose of this was for retransmission of communications. And this was actually reported by a number of people, Brian Shee, Todd M. Young, Kevin McElroy, and Jack Allred. And Todd Young commented there was a bunker on top of the hill that we used for retransmission site during training. The vegetation was always brown around the bunker, and he pointed out where he thought it was by giving a link. And his link actually comes out to the bottom of the hill. The top of the hill here obviously has a number of structures and so forth, and may still be used in some capacity. And to give you a better idea, the area he's talking about with the bunker and so forth, you know, you sit on the top of the hill and you can see different structures and trails and so forth going up to the top of the hill here. And on our 1969 low resolution, you can see that obviously this has been kept clear. There we go. That's Empire Range.
I'd like to thank veteran Richard Wyman for putting together all of this information on possible places to test in the Panama Canal Zone. I'd like you to all come over to the Military Veterans Advocacy and join with us today. We are further than we have ever been before. We have a rulemaking request that's been granted by the VA Secretary. We have a HR 5026 bill for Panama introduced into the Congress, and we could not have done that without the Military Veterans Advocacy and the leadership of Commander John Wells. There's also a ton of information under the Veterans of Panama Canal that we have submitted to the VA Secretary who granted our requests. So this information might be able to help you in your claims. And if you need help with an attorney, if you're at the appeals level, use our contact button and contact our administrative staff and they can guide you for help.